Welcome to Transform Your Workplace. I'm Brandon Laws, and I'm here with Nicole Blevins again. Nicole, it's good to have you back.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
You have no idea what I'm about to ask you. The topic, I've not given you anything other than loosely based on compensation. So one of the things that you said on a podcast with Mac Pritchard, who has the Find Your Dream Job podcast, great show for career seekers. And you went on there and talked about generative AI. And what came up for me, you said that employees are often using generative AI like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or any of those tools that are available now. And they're asking AI, what is the range of salary for a position like mine? And they might enter geographical information that helps specify what the range might be for a title or functional role plus the geography. And it does, I've tested it myself after you said something like that, and it does come back with a range. And I'm thinking back where we were so many years ago where employers had all the leverage, like all the information. But now we have Glassdoor and we got LinkedIn and I mean, obviously job boards and that list salary, they have all that information. And generative AI is trained on web data and what it's fed. So my question to you is, what do employers do now that employees now have these tools that give them more information and more leverage for negotiation come raises or a promotion or something like that, where now we got to come to the table together? And I think it's more of a togetherness than ever before, a collaborative effort. What do you recommend?
Yeah, employees have access to so much more data and information than they used to, where employers really had all the power. They had that data and could choose whether or not they wanted to share it or not, right? And really, we've seen a movement of like posting salaries on job postings and being transparent and things like that. And really, I think employers have to be armed with data as well and being willing to come to the table and have a conversation with employee about, here's what our data says, tell me more about what your data is saying, so we can kind of compare and talk about if there's a variance, why is that? And where we got our data and information from as the employer and how it's validated, how it's important, because that ChatGPT stuff is going to give you some data points, right? Some information, but it's all based on what's on the internet, right? And we know that not everything on the internet is validated, right? And is 100% accurate. And there's a wide range of what you could find on the internet as well. Whereas employer-driven sources, like kind of what we do on the Xenium side with our certified compensation analyst, is really taking employer-reported, validated, verified information of what the range is for this specific job title with these specific duties, right? Job title doesn't mean everything, right? If you search for a job title, that may not be reflective of what that person's duties actually are. So, employers just really have to get savvy and have some like method to the madness, if that makes sense, on like, what is our compensation structure? Where did we get this data from? How did we validate it? So that we can come, armed with that data to have those types of tough conversations.
Yeah. I think employers, there's some clear steps that need to happen, I think, to get ahead of this and to be very transparent about compensation. And I think, honestly, it starts with job descriptions. I don't know if you agree or disagree with it, but I think having very specific written job descriptions by the title or role with the duties that they actually do, plus the competencies, because then once you get all that cleaned up, then you can actually take that to some sort of market data research. Like we use ERI, there's other things out there as well, but we will put all those job duties in there. And then you would also tailor it to what's the organization, size and revenue, geography,
the industry, size. Yep.
All that. Those factors play a key role in what output comes out of that. And I think just being very clear about philosophy and the way in which we're treating compensation, just our methodology around it is what employees need to hear.
Yeah. And I mean, being able to explain that to an employee is really important. A lot of times employees aren't educated on what all goes into determining what compensation is, right? They might just be going online and seeing that an executive assistant at Google makes this much money and I am an executive assistant, so shouldn't I be making that much money? Well, you work at a small nonprofit, as an example, right? And so you're not comparing apples to apples to where that compensation is going to be the same as an executive assistant at Google or something like that. So I think really being able to have those conversations and educate employees a little bit on what all goes into compensation, how we make those decisions, what is our philosophy. Like, we want to be competitive, right? But we have to be competitive within our industry, and really comparing apples to apples there, and supporting employees and understanding that.
How do you recommend employers communicate this? Is it in a one-on-one fashion? Is it across the board? We have like an all-team meeting where we're talking about our compensation structure, philosophy, and the way we go about that. What do you recommend?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think talking to all employees and setting the expectation up front with employees of like, here is our philosophy, right? We pull data every year to make sure that we're being competitive, and we make adjustments, based on what that data is telling us. Our goal is to pay at market or above market or below market because we have a great benefits package, or whatever that strategy is on where they're deciding where in that range they're going to put employees. Like, explaining that up front really helps employees like know what to expect. And I think communicating in an all team fashion like that shows transparency, shows that like you're saying the same message to everybody, right? In this all team meeting, we're consistent with that. We care about fair pay for the work that you're doing. And then also having those one-on-one conversations if and when questions come up, right? After that communication, an employee might have more specific questions or want to dive into their specific compensation and where they fall within the range and how that was determined, so that they have a better understanding as well. And I think that's okay. And we as employers have to be okay with that, whereas maybe we weren't in the past, right? We were like, why are you asking about this? But now it's really important. Like, transparency is important to people coming into the workforce, and having those conversations shows that you are being transparent and you're willing to have those conversations with employees rather than shutting it down.
What comes up for me, regardless if we do all of this work as an employer and even as managers, we have these conversations with our people, this is an emotional subject. And I think as an employee, if you have tools like ChatGPT and Glassdoor where salaries are kind of listed, and then you also have peers, you have peers who maybe are progressing in their career, or visibly from social media or whatever, it appears that they're making way more money and are progressing faster. And so those sort of things play a factor in employees and their conversations with their employers. So I don't know if you have any advice for employers or employees or both. How do you take the emotion out of this?
Yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question, because it is hard and it is very emotional, especially in the society that we live in, where we are driven by things and materialism and comparing ourselves to like others and what they're making, or the things that they have in their lives that we may want. And I think employers just coming into that conversation with the mindset or understanding that it is emotional, and that the employee may not like what you're saying, right? Or what you have to share. And like, we have to be okay with that, right? We just have to do the best that we can in explaining and saying, like, we understand that that may not be the compensation that you want or where you want to be, long term. And maybe you're driven by money and you want to make more money. And so then we can shift the conversation to talk about how that can happen, right? Are there promotional opportunities that we can prepare them for, where they have the opportunity to make more money in a different role if the compensation for their current role, the data that we have says that they're where they should be. So just being prepared to have those conversations, preparing them for the next role. And I think also like employers being okay with or supporting their employees if the employee says, well, I really need to make more money, and there's this executive assistant job at Google is making a ton of money and I maybe want to pursue that. Like, that's okay too, right? Like, we all have our own unique goals and desires, and like, just being prepared for that is okay. And supporting that employee, like, if you can be the executive assistant at Google, like, go for it, like, good for you. I want to support you, and I totally understand that, because that's not something within our budget and our industry and our size that we can do for you. And we wish that we could, right? We wish we could pay everyone $100,000 a year or whatever, but that's just not where we are at financially and based on our size. I think it's a tough conversation on both ends to have, and there's emotions on all levels happening. And so just understanding that going into the conversation, I think can make a difference, that nobody gets offended, one way or another with just the data and the information that we're trying to communicate.
Yeah, well said. Well, I appreciate you coming on and letting me spring this topic on you based on what you said on another podcast. I'm like, I just had to ask you about it. But if there's anything you could say about, like, if employers are listening and be like, I never really had a concerted effort around a compensation strategy. Xenium does this for clients, small, mid-size, even large organizations who struggle with this. Maybe talk real quick about what is Xenium's approach to compensation with employers if they want to hire us for it.
Yeah, our approach to compensation is really a collaborative approach to where like we want to meet with employers to really understand like where they're at and what their strategy is. So kind of talking at the very beginning about what is your strategy? Are you a nonprofit with really great benefits or pension or other benefits to where you tend to pay lower on the market side, or are you wanting to pay above and below the market, and just really giving some guidance and advice and strategy about what might work best for your workforce depending on your industry and your revenue and kind of where you are as an organization. So it's a really collaborative approach where we're trying to understand and give you guidance and support too on what a good philosophy or strategy could be for your specific and unique workforce. And then really diving deep into the job descriptions, right? Are they accurate and up to date? Are they really reflecting the jobs that you have so that you can accurately get good data from the market on what that role for the work that they're doing in their actual job duties should be paid, or what that range should be, and then putting that structure together for you and guidance on how to use that structure to be able to make decisions for new hires coming in, placing and rearranging your existing workforce if there's some areas where they might be above or below what the market data is saying, so that we can support you through making those adjustments on your team as well, and communicating to them like the why behind it. Here's the methodology we went through, and here's what that data said, and so this is why we're adjusting you.
Yeah, this work is really time intensive and can be tedious. And so for employers, I would just say, like, if you need somebody on your bench to help you with this work, we've done it 1,000 times. So happy to support, and we'll make sure to put a link in the show notes for our compensation services. But Nicole, thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate you.
It was fun. I'll talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in for today's episode of Transform Your Workplace. The content on this show is strictly for general information and educational purposes only, so that you can go transform your workplace in a positive way. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the show are the guest's own and don't represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of either Xenium HR, the sponsor of the show, or me, the host, Brandon Laws. Additionally, Xenium HR or myself, Brandon Laws, doesn't endorse any guest, their business, or any organization they represent, so discretion is advised. We encourage you to work with a trusted advisor to find a custom approach that fits your organization's needs. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode.